They are dismantling the sleeping middle class. More and more people are becoming poor. We are their cattle. We are being bred for slavery. The revolution.
They Live. The piece de resistance of B-movies. An iconic 80s action flick, iconic one-liner. John Carpenter, one of my favorite living directors who gave us Halloween, The Thing, and so many other movies. But They Live might just be the most topical movie currently. And it was his last movie in the 80s. So let's jump into They Live. We're doing this a little different. Feel free to like, subscribe if you're interested in trying to watch more movies than me. Let's get into it. I don't know if you just like the content. God bless. Let's go. So the piece de resistance of B-movies. They Live is John Carpenter's last movie in the 80s, and it's a critique of the society he found himself in at the time. We're talking Raeganomics being a prime motive. He's gone on and said that in interviews. But his heart was also juxtaposed with this beautiful 80s action flick. I'm talking iconic one-liner goodness.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. And I'm all out of bubblegum.
It's in this art style that it's so unique, it'll forever be etched in pop culture history. You've seen some of it, I promise. Now, stopping at Carpenter's disdain for Reagan's supply-side economics, that could be all you take from this movie. I think that there's something deeper here. I think there's something more human. Seeing as how the story goes, and then Carpenter took inspiration from 8 O'Clock in the Morning, which was made into a comic book, but it was first published in November of 1963. Issue of the magazine of fantasy and science fiction. But Carpenter first encountered it 23 years later in the comic book adaptation Nada, which is actually the main character who has no name. The only name you ever see for Rowdy Roddy Pipper is in the credits, and I'm crushing leaves underneath me. That's okay, because I haven't raked in years. The only name given is in the credits, and it's Nada, as a nod to the comic. So I think what he's hitting on in They Live is much older than Raeganomics. It's something almost ancient. Because, I mean, think about it. The original story that he took all inspiration from came from 1963, way before Reagan was president. He was the 80s guy. And that makes me believe that the themes Carpenter was uneasy with are larger than just a decade in the US. I think it's an issue that resurfaced during that time. And does that let him to kind of call the audience to look at things for what they are in this movie? Greed, consumerism, conformity. I think these are three pillars of this movie, and that he calls us to look deeper. These things make any thoughtful person uncomfortable, let's be honest. And yet they're interwoven into society on basically every level. Every level. And we make and participate in each of them day in and day out. And I think that's the crux of this movie. And John Carpenter was calling us to put on these bad glasses and see things for what they really are. There's an ant on the camera. We're going to keep going. And what things can be when looked under the surface are devoid of meaning, meant to keep you right where you are. In place and a gear in the machine. I don't want to stray too far from what this is about. This video is about the movie They Live. Okay? But I believe Carpenter was calling us to talk about these things. Or at least examine them in our lives. In an age where geniuses flood your phone and face with social media so brilliantly called and designed with their logarithm to keep you scrolling and scrolling, and that dopamine and that serotonin when you see the notification keeping you up, I don't think there's a more topical movie at the moment. And that's not even addressing the current economic philosophy clashes that still have resurfaced to this day. Now, to discuss the film itself, is They Live the greatest B-movie of all time? Yes. Yes, it is. Low budget, took a chance on casting a wrestling superstar as a lead that hadn't been done to that point. And it took a swing at the largest political movement of the time. With its leader, Reagan, had an approval rating of FDR when he left office. This was a countercultural film. And I think that Carpenter's mind and his convictions are apparent in They Live. You can kind of insert yourself into the lead character, Rowdy Roddy Pipper, as Joe Nada. He's an everyday man. And I think Carpenter's kind of calling to put yourself into that role, right? So we get to see the movie through him. Rolls in a new town as a homeless laborer. Immediately befriended. He's the actor he's befriended by, I'll probably put in a text right here. I don't have it on me at the moment, but he's great in everything he's ever been in. This movie has one of the most iconic 6-minute long fight scenes of all time. They call it the greatest fight scene in any movie ever. So he rolls into town. He still has hope. He thinks he puts in a good day's work. He'll get a good, get a good salary out of it, get provision out of it. And then this gentleman he meets talks about his family being back in Detroit and the steel mills cutting their jobs, but the rich and the ones that owning it got richer. So they're signing checks, cashing checks. Labor's got cut out, so this gentleman comes from Detroit looking for work. And the movie starts slow, but the payoff is worth it. Promise. Shady activity happening around 4 a.m. at the church across from the homeless shelter. By the way, John Carpenter at this homeless shelter, when he shot, provided them all with money and meals throughout the shooting of this movie. There's an ant, and I'm just... Get out of there, you little... Okay. So, we're about to be back in action. Don't worry, I still want to... only have one cam, so... I might edit this out, I might not. I want to watch this anyway, so we can kind of have some fun and do it how we want to. I just hope ants aren't crawling up my foot. So, alright. So he finds out in this church, some weird activity around 4 a.m. He goes in, and Nada finds, we'll call him John, they're making glasses, right? Let's cut forward a little bit. He finds a box of these glasses after this church was raided by the government, police, helicopters, the whole shebang. They get ran out. He goes snooping, and in trash he finds a box of glasses, right? He puts on these fly sunglasses, and what do you know? He can see behind the curtain. He sees on the face of people that look just like you and I, bug-eyed aliens right among us. This movie slaughters this cool mechanic. The change in color and texture when he puts the glasses on, the actual paintings and the way the SFX did in this movie, and the ads and backdrop. It's a master class in taking low budget and making something stylistically ageless. And it's so much fun to look at. This movie's so much fun to look at. Dogs barking. And I think this movie's evergreen. That's why it's a classic. Even in my first viewing, it was just recent, the themes aren't just themes of Reagan. They're not just themes of the 80s or even the 60s when the first story was contrived. I think that you can go back to mankind's beginning and see the same things and warnings about them. Greed, overconsumption, conformity. And if you can't see the parallels between this movie and how we have devices in our pockets we stare out for 5 hours a day, on average influencing our purchase decisions, our mindsets, our very well-being, our mental health, well, look closer. And that's what makes it such a dangerous and cool film. All the beauty of the 80s action flick, I mean all of it, with so much character given by the SFX side, the special effects, on the art side of things, an incredible, perpetually relevant story, answer, oh my leg, told by one of the most prolific directors alive, John Carpenter. He had something to say then, and I believe we still do today on the exact same subject. But don't just obey, okay? And please destroy your echo chambers. It'd be easy to watch this movie and say, get 'em, John, screw capitalism, right? But he himself was a fan of it. It's unbridled and unrestrained capitalism that worried John Carpenter, and still does to this day. It's the rich getting richer, and that this will somehow trickle down to the middle class that he was uncomfortable with. Especially when you had the celebrity president of Reagan at the time, and just the approval rating of the nation. And then this first time seeing the supply side economics in this way. He was uncomfortable with it. And like I said, I still think it's more than that though. I think this movie's about the impact the elite have on us, whether we recognize it or not. The constant inputs from so many sources, our mind's not even working anymore to decipher what's real. We only have control about 2% of our actions on any given day anyway, the rest is autopilot, and that's scary as I only bring up John Carpenter's thoughts on capitalism though, to show nuance, that things are not always black and white. And if you start to see them as such, put the daggum glasses on and see for yourself. And then think for yourself. In this movie, the culture was told, and in the 80s, debt is fine. Spend, 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 it'll boost the economy. The DNA of the 80s was reinforced by this economic philosophy, if you will. and that it bolstered the economy. But I think that Carpenter had a good point here when he said the overextension of capitalism, when it's unrestrained, he said that unrestrained capitalism leads to depressions. We had the prime mortgage in the early 2000s and da-da-da-da-da. You can do research. But my advice on this subject, first of all, enjoy They Live. It's a sick movie. But also be fiscally prudent. It's even more important now than ever before. Examine everything you're told and think for yourself. Please. Don't surround yourself with just like-minded people that see the world the exact same way you do. That's boring anyways, and it's going to create a small mind. Bring back disagreement, the color gray, the love for adventure, and not just doing what you're told. A House in the Burbs by 30, that's not for everybody. For some people, that's for the birds. Birds in the Burbs, band name. And debt is a downer. It just is. The more free, the better, I promise. And don't just obey, conform, and consume. Live, love, and view the miracle of life and your existence as a call to adventure, as a call to more. Now let me know, do you watch They Live by John Carpenter? It's an awesome movie, worth your time. What do you think? Comment down below. What do you think about the movie? What do you think about this classic 80s B-movie masterpiece by one of the greatest? What's your favorite Carpenter movie? And what do you take from the movie? You know we're interested in what the heart of the director and what he was trying to portray when he painted this art. We'll always look at that. What are your thoughts on that? And always, thanks for watching, and go hug your mamas. Let me know what you thought about the new format too. We're gonna keep changing it up. We're gonna keep doing the thing. We want vlogs? We have vloggers here? God bless. I watch more movies than you.